Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome back to the annotation series. So today we will discuss about @REST controller. So @REST controller is an annotation that is used in a Spring framework to define a RESTful web service controller. So when we have to work with web services in then in that controller we use @REST controller to mark any class as a controller, and we know that the controller is the very first point where the API get hit, right? So basically it is the entry point of any web application. So after Spring version 4.x introduced this annotation where we can use REST controller in place of @controller and @response body. So now with the Java version, now with the Spring version 4.x, we can replace controller and the response body annotation with the REST controller. So when you annotate a class with REST controller, the Spring automatically will serialize the return value of the method within the class into the JSON or XML. So basically it depends on the configuration, the content type request by the client, and send it back to the client. So this eliminates the need of manual serializing the object as a JSON or XML response, right? So basically this will automatically serialize and it will return as per the requirement by the client, right? So this will eliminate the two annotation. Basically this is a combination of @controller and @response body. Okay, so now let's move to the application and let's see how we can use this, and there we will understand it better. So this is our Spring Boot application where already we have some controller. So here you can see that I have an employee controller. Employee controller is marked with @controller, and here there is one endpoint with the name get employee details. So basically this is fetching the employee detail, and here we are using @response body. So this annotation @response body is to convert the response to a JSON. So by default this will convert the response to a JSON and then it will render to the API call, right? So basically this will, yeah, so basically this will return into the JSON format due to this annotation. And we have marked this employee controller as a controller by using @controller. Yeah, so like this will be the entry point of your web application. So whenever an API call will get hit with this address, then it will first hit this endpoint or this method, right? And then further it will do some execution. Here you can see we have a service class. In that service class we have a method get employee where you can write your own business logic, but for now I am just fetching the repository. Okay, here I have auto-wide repository, and inside repository interface we have a get employee method, and get employee method is just returning a dummy string, right? Now let's move to a controller. So here, yeah, so here as I told you that we can use REST controller also, but first you need to understand where to use controller and where to use REST controller. So controller will only be used with the MVC projects, and REST controller will be used with the RESTful web services. All right. So here you can see in this endpoint I have defined with a response body annotation. So this I can cut it and also paste it over the class level annotation. So this will make the same thing. It will return. Yeah. So basically if you're using this annotation in a class level, then every endpoint will be marked with response body. All right. Now, okay, now let me show you the response for this first by using controller and response body. So let me run this application for now. So I have started this application, and you will see that my application is started at port number 8080. Okay, so this is the endpoint we are going to test. So let me go to the postman and let me show you the response for this. Yeah, so this is the get employee detail is the URL. So let me hit. So you can see that we are getting the response as a JSON, but in a string, dummy string. All right, so let me go and then let me do some changes. Okay, so first I will show you. Yeah, so like already I told you that we have the REST controller, and REST controller is the combination of this. So let me use write REST controller. Yeah, so for these two annotation, at the rate controller and response body, we can use at the rate controller, and the response body was used to convert the response to a JSON, right? So now these REST controller will use controller and the response body. So let me show you the implementation of this. So you can go to the REST controller, and here you can see it is marked with response body, and also it is marked with controller. And in the allies you can see, yeah, so in the alias you can see controller dot class, right? So it is coming from the controller and the response body. Now I will show you some, yeah, so now I will create one model. So let me go to the base package, and let's create one package with model. And in this model class I will create one Java class, let's say employee model. And this employee model will contain some field, employee ID, and the next, let's say employee name, next employee address. Yeah, so these are the three fields I have created to this model class. Let me generate the constructor. And also, so first I will generate constructor so that we can set the property, or we can initialize the value to this properties using the constructor. And then let me create the getter method for these three fields, so that we can access the properties of this. All right, yeah, so this is my like model class employee. So let's go to the controller, and here in the controller we are calling service class. You can see that I have done the auto wire for this service class, and there we have a get employee method. So this is the employee service which content get employee, and further it is calling to repository. So here what I will do, here I will create the employee. I will create the object of this employee model, and in the constructor let's pass some employee ID, emp123. Let pass the employee name. Let's pass the address as India. Yeah, so basically I have created one model, employee model, where I am passing, means creating the object, and in the constructor I am passing these values, employee ID, employee number, and the employee address. All right, and now I want to return this. So directly I will return this employee. So return type will be employee class, and in the similar manner here in the controller also the return type will get employee. All right, so I have done some changes in the service class. Now I have created the employee, and I am returning this employee model. All right, now let's go to our main class. Now let's run this application. So here you can see that employee controller is calling service class. Service class is just creating one employee model object where we are setting this value and then just returning this employee object. So I have started my application. Now let's go to the postman, and here the get employee detail I am calling, hit the send button. Now you can see I am receiving this as an JSON object, right? So how I am receiving this? This is due to, because here you can see that I'm not using the response body now, but I'm using REST controller, and the REST controller is adding controller and response body, right? So this employee, so basically here, so this is returning the employee model, and in the controller we are getting it, right? So whenever we are returning to the API call, then it will convert this model to a JSON object, and then it will return it. So whatever we are getting in the postman, you can see we are getting in a JSON format, right? Yeah. So this is all about the REST controller. And one more thing you need to know, that which I already told you, that controller annotation we use with the MVC project, Spring MVC project. But REST controller we use with the RESTful web services, where we have to use the RESTful to create your API and use in our web services. Then we go with the REST controller, and this come in picture with Spring version 4.x and above, right? Yeah. So thank you and have a nice day. See you in the next lecture.